Welcome back, artists. I'm Waiya Paints, and today I've got something a little bit different for you. A few weeks ago, I asked the painting pantheon what should be my next big project, and Galactus, the Destroyer of Worlds, was the clear winner. Meanwhile, fellow artist KGB Artistry, he floated out the idea of a friendly paid-off, and as luck would have it, we both happened to have the same Galactus STL. It was all quite serendipitous. Serendipitous. Thanks, college. Since painting both of them the same would be pretty plain Jane, I'll be painting him in his typical color scheme, while KGB will be painting up the Lifebringer variant. Knowing I had to show off my work next to some top-tier talent, I knew I had to use every tool available, so that means airbrush. I'm pretty sure I hear a cosmic tummy rumbling, so I'm gonna grab my brushes. Let's get started. I'll be starting this one in the priming step. Since Purple Pants here is mostly metallics, I prefer to start with a gloss coat here rather than a matte one. For me, it lends much more luster to metals, so it's sort of an automatic choice at this point. Even though this is just priming, it's a good idea to treat this exactly as any other step in the painting process. What I'm looking here is for a glossy candy coat, so my usual cavalier manhandling of parts will be sidelined for some mounting sticks. These are just some chopsticks I picked up off of Amazon. You can get like 120 pairs for like $7. Cheap, useful, and biodegradable. For my first metallic, lavender purple mica powder. This is a set I picked up a couple of years ago that comes in solid whenever I need to mix up some custom colors. Just a bit of gloss varnish and some thinner, and it's ready to spray. One thing to keep in mind is that mica powder breaks from solution pretty fast, so give it a good energetic mix right before loading your brush. And be ready to backwash it every now and then to keep the mix right. I sprayed this from a decent distance away from the part so that it can slowly build up the color. Being too close will result in heavy spots that will look off, so it's best to keep it on the far side and mist it up. Next, I grabbed some magenta as a mix-in. The goal here is to add a bit of a prismatic look. While you can mix mica powders, they don't really mix like you would a normal paint. As you can see here, the purple and magenta are still each visible. The reason for this is the powder acts like tiny little colored mirrors, each piece only reflecting a single color. They're just sitting really close to each other. This effect is pretty soft and kind of hard to pick up on camera, but in person, it's worth the extra step to get that little bit of color shift. You can really push this and take this farther to the true magenta, but I wanted a darker overall look, so a slight shift is good for me. With my purples down, it was time for a lot of masking. While I do that, let's check in to see how KGB is doing. It looks like he started with the head and skin. His skin looks fantastic, and it seems like he's gone for a bronzy gold for his base. He then moved up to edge highlighting with a bright gold and a dry brush. Notice how he's keeping all of his strokes moving from the top down. This will help keep all of the reflective sheen he's adding in line with each other and hopefully only catch the top edge of details. He then swapped over to silver to hand paint some of the finer details around the face. In situations where you have a limited color palette, it's really important to break up those larger color blocks like this. Otherwise, your piece can end up looking a bit flat. So it's a good idea to treat your secondary color as an accent color to the first and vice versa. Even as simple as painting the radiator an accent color makes this horn look more legit and practical. That head is looking fantastic. I'll check back in with you in a bit. With my Destroyer of Worlds all masked up, he was ready for his blues. Starting with the creatively spelled navy blue. One of the advantages of using a gloss black prime for mica powder is that you can hit this magical level of coverage where the color will pop in for certain angles while shifting to black at others. I wish I can tell you that it's just 40% coverage or whatnot, but it would be a wild guess as this number changes from color to color. You're just gonna have to eyeball it for yourself. But if you nail it, you're gonna get an awesome look without having to bother with highlights or shading. Since I shifted the purple, I shifted the blues as well with a bit of sky blue. Like magenta, this is going to be a slight shift to the main color. To apply this, I kept it at an extreme top-down angle, but this isn't for a directional light source. The shift would be too slight for that. Besides, this is a cosmic being, so I imagine it being lit by a 360-degree blanket of stars. So I don't really want an obvious light source painted in. Instead, I'm going to rely on practical lighting and the reflectiveness of the gloss. Before I leave the booth, I gave the base, his chest, and back medallion a spray down of metallic finish. This is my preferred way to lay down a very reflective, almost chrome finish. To get that finish, I have to pace myself and do multiple dusting passes to let it really build up. I don't want to see full coverage until it's about the third or fourth time hitting an area. If you pack this on too thick, not only will you get drips to deal with, but the paint will actually look dull. So remember, if you want shiny, slow is the way to get there. For what I think are cosmic flames, I wanted to use a very fancy rattle can that I picked up after watching Ground Affected. Truth be told, it's not sold in my state and I'm not really supposed to have it. So I'll just be calling this Forbidden Gold. And I can tell you from experience, you don't want to spray this indoors. I made the mistake so you don't have to. And while I had my respirator on and painted by a window with a fan blowing on high, my paint room smelled quite cancery for like 2 days. Lesson learned. Just like with the metallic finish, I built up a luster over a few thin coats until it was super shiny. But it was a little too clean and shiny for my taste, so I came back with a bit of black to shade everything from below. Now I know, flames should have brighter cores and darker rising flames, but this is cosmic gold fire, so the rules of nature definitely take a backseat to creativity. So black gold fire it is. As I move everything over to my painting table, I figured this is a good time to take a second and thank all my subscribers over on Patreon. With an extra special thank you to our newest name etched into the Pantheon, Brad Matt. That's an important hyphen. Times are tough and they're getting even tougher. That's why I appreciate every single dollar that makes it in the cup. I'm truly grateful. If you would like to join the Painting Pantheon, you'll find a link to my Patreon in the description below. Or you can help out the channel by slamming that like button. That way, this video finds its way in front of more eyes. That's gonna be enough shameless begging for love. Let's get back to work. Checking back in with KGB, he's moved on to the body and started with a zenithal pre-highlight. This is a step that can not only inform you where your highlights should go, but also gives him a nice little boost. As he moves on to laying down his gold, you can see how much pop he's getting off it while still maintaining those inky black shadows. Once it was dry, you can tell his gold just loves the light. But KGB wasn't happy with just the shine, he wanted brilliance. So he came back in with his shiniest gold to reinforce all those pre-highlighted areas from the zenithal. Wow, this cat is blinged out. I'm definitely gonna need some shades. Back at my table, it was time to tackle those planets. This first one looks very much like our moon, so I'm gonna keep it simple and just paint it like our moon, starting with a base of ash gray. Once I got full coverage, I switched over to spaceship exterior and a super light dry brush to highlight all the crags and leave it with a nice dusty finish. Perfect for the moon. For the smaller planet, it kind of reminded me of Pluto. In that case, I wanted a bit of a colder tone, so I based it in Frostbite, and just like the moon, I gave it a very light dry brush of Spaceship. Next, I added some gunmetal to all the circuitry details on his wrist cuffs. I don't want to add too much here and end up making the gloves look more silver than purple. And you can get by with just leaving these purple, as they would match his canonic look better. But I wanted to add a bit of visual interest. If you do this, remember to use the belly of the brush, not the tip. It'll make it a lot easier to keep the paint on top of the detail. If you use the tip, you run the risk of it slipping off and leaving marks on that royal purple. To finish off the details on the hands, I used greedy gold for the little diodes on the knuckles. Again, I'm keeping this simple to prevent making the hands too busy. Sometimes having too much going on starts to detract from the overall form. This goes double for subjects like Galactus that have a fairly simple design and color scheme. Trying to be too clever here will very quickly have the model looking very different from what it was intended. I know I shouldn't mind them, but I'm an artist, so every opinion weighs on me. With the hands done, it was time to tackle the skin on his face. For that, I'm turning to a standard skin recipe of splattered crimson and cobalt skin on my trusty wet palette. Now, normally, basic painting technique would have me do the skin first, then the armor. But I like to paint from messy to clean, so spraying the metallics will always come first. It does mean I'm gonna have to take some caution when nearing the edge, but it's only a slight speed bump and well worth the time. When I do skins, I like to start with normal strokes for even coverage for the early colors. Then as I move up through the shades, I'll start to move on to more of a stipple. This lets me build up a natural looking skin texture without too much stress. And before you know it, your skin is going to be looking fantastic. As one of the final details, I wanted to add an OSL effect for the Power Cosmic. First by filling in the eyes with white ink and then back to the spray booth for a hazy glow. What this is going to do is lay the base for the next color to sit on. If I skip this step, it's going to take a whole lot more spraying to get the accent color to show up. So a white base is going to be necessary when you're dealing with a dark base color. Once I get the slight halo formed, I hit the brakes and switch to blue ink for the first layer of glow. I need to keep this light because again, I want this to be a glow on top of the metallics. So I have to maintain that transparency. I only really want full coverage in the eyes themselves, with that color spilling over and tinting the outside area. Now my outer glow is done, but for a really poppy OSL, I'm going to need to reinforce that hotter part by giving it just a touch of white on top. Then I repeated these same steps on spots that made sense to be focal points of his power, like his chest and back medallions and his head. I then dropped down to the mechanical plinth. I didn't want to do too much here because I really like the pristine, milled alloy look. It reminds me a lot of the endoskeletons from Terminator, which totally fits the Destroyer of Worlds. After a few more last minute details like the radiators on his horns and blacking out the stars in the cosmic fire, I called mine done. And wow, these came out great! I would ask you which one y'all like better, but I've got eyes and I don't want to get my feelings hurt. KGB nailed those goals like nobody business. And look at that galaxy. Oh geez, why you embarrass me like this? How you gonna come up a channel and embarrass me like this, KGB? Ooh, that was gorgeous work, gorgeous. Honestly, it makes me want to do the full statue as Lifebringer. Maybe one day. What about all of you? If you're gonna paint a Galactus, Would you do the traditional or the Lifebringer? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments. And once again, I'd also like to extend a very special thank you to KGB Artistry for participating in this exercise and showing off his amazing talent. If you want to check out what he's working on, I'll leave a link to his Instagram in the description below. Be sure to check him out and let him know how awesome his work is. I'm sure you're going to love it. For now, it's time for me to go. So as always, thank you for watching, stay creative, and always enjoy the process.